His fork stopped halfway to his mouth, and I watched the color drain out of his face like someone had pulled a plug. The garlic shrimp I'd spent 2 hours making sat steaming between us, and all I'd asked was whether he knew what the doctor had told her. He set the fork down very carefully, the way you set down something you suddenly realize might be a bomb. I should back up. My name doesn't matter much for this, but I'll tell you I was 31 when it happened, working as a dental hygienist in a suburb outside Columbus, married 6 years to a man I genuinely thought was my best friend. We met at a wedding of all places. He spilled red wine on my dress, and spent the rest of the night apologizing in ways that were so earnest and clumsy, I ended up giving him my number just to make him stop. That was him. Earnest, clumsy. The kind of guy who tipped 25% and remembered the names of every waitress. People loved him. I loved him. For a long time I thought I was the lucky one. He worked in commercial real estate, the kind of job that came with travel I never questioned. Conferences in Dallas, site visits in Charlotte, a developer dinner in Nashville. He'd come home with little gifts, a magnet for the fridge, a snow globe, once that I still don't know why he bought. And there was a woman at his firm he called his work wife. He said it like it was nothing, like everyone had one. Gotta text the work wife, she's got the closing docs. I'd roll my eyes. I thought it was a dumb phrase that married men used to feel young. I didn't think it meant anything because I didn't want it to. Then came the trip. 15 days. He told me it was a regional training thing, some leadership intensive his company was sending the top performers to. All expenses paid, very prestigious, couldn't say no. 15 days is a long time. I remember thinking that, even as I was helping him pack. 15 days is a honeymoon, but he was so excited, and he kept saying it would be good for his trajectory, good for us, good for the future we kept talking about and never quite building, and I wanted to believe him so badly that I packed his good shirts and drove him to the airport and kissed him at the curb and told him I'd miss him. He texted me the first night a picture of a hotel room. Generic, beige, a king bed, blackout curtains. "Miss you already," he wrote. I sent back a heart. The thing about being married to someone for 6 years is you stop looking, not because you don't care, but because you've decided. You made your bet. You don't recount the cards. So for the first week I genuinely didn't suspect anything. He called every night. We talked about nothing, the dishwasher that was acting up, his mother's hip, whether we should finally repaint the guest room. Normal. Boring. Married. It was the credit card alert that cracked it open. We share a card for household stuff, and I get the alerts on my phone because I'm the one who tracks the budget. A charge came through on day 8. A restaurant. Not Dallas, not anywhere near where he told me the training was. A seafood place in Key West, Florida. $41. I stared at it. Key West. He'd said the training was in Atlanta. I told myself it was a glitch. Cards get cloned. Numbers get skimmed. I almost called the bank, but something made me pull up the full statement instead. The one we never look at, the itemized one. And I started reading from the top, and that's when my stomach went cold. There was a resort charge, $490 a night, for 9 nights, on an island he'd told me he wasn't on. There was a charge at a place called a Sunset Sail Company, 2 tickets. There was a couple spa package. There was a jewelry store, $312, and I knew it wasn't for me because I was standing in our kitchen in Ohio looking at the receipt for a thing I would never receive. I want to be honest about what that moment was like because the videos always skip it. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't scream or throw anything. I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs stopped working, and I held my phone, and I think I made a sound I'd never made before. Something between a laugh and a wheeze because part of my brain refused to process it and kept offering up excuses. Maybe it was a client trip. Maybe the spa was a misunderstanding. Maybe. And then he called. Right on schedule. 9 p.m. our time. I almost didn't pick up, but I did, and I made my voice normal, and I asked him how the training was going, and he sighed and said it was intense, long days, a lot of breakout sessions. He was exhausted. He said the hotel food was terrible. He said he couldn't wait to come home. I asked him what the weather was like in Atlanta. He said it was rainy, gray all week. I had pulled up the forecast for Atlanta while he was talking. Clear skies, 84 degrees, 7 days running, and I had also, by then, pulled up the forecast for Key West, where there had been a tropical storm on day 6 that flooded half the lower Keys. I knew which weather he was actually living in. He'd just told me the wrong sky. I said something light, that I hoped it cleared up, and I told him I loved him, and I hung up, and I sat there in the dark for a long time. Here is the part where I think a lot of people would have called him right back and screamed. I understand the impulse. I felt it in my teeth. But I had 7 days left before he came home, and somewhere in that cold quiet a different feeling moved in and made itself comfortable. Not rage exactly, clarity. I realized that if I confronted him now, over the phone 2,000 miles away, he would lie and apologize and cry and come home and manage me. He was good at managing people. I'd seen him do it for years and called it charm. I didn't want to be managed. I wanted the truth, all of it, laid out where he couldn't wriggle. So I did something I'm not proud of and also would do again. I went quiet. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not because I'd decided anything, I told myself. Just to understand my options, just to know. Her name was a referral from a hygienist friend who'd been through her own version of this, and she saw me that same week. She was direct in a way that steadied me. She told me Ohio is an equitable distribution state, which I didn't fully understand, and she explained it, and she told me the single most important thing was documentation. Don't confront. Don't tip him off. Screenshot everything. Pull the statements before anyone thinks to lock you out. Open your own account. Know where you stand before he knows you're standing anywhere at all. I did all of it. I made a folder, an actual physical folder, and a digital one backed up 2 places. The credit card statements. The bank records. I found the airline itinerary in our shared email, which he'd forgotten he'd left me access to, and it showed 2 passengers, his name and a woman's, on the same flight to Key West. Her name was right there, the work wife. I opened a checking account in my name at a different bank and moved exactly half of our shared savings into it, which the lawyer said was within my rights, and which I documented down to the penny so no one could ever say I stole. I changed the passwords on my own accounts. I made copies of the deed to the house, the title to my car, the life insurance policies. I learned more about our own finances in 5 days than I had in 6 years of marriage, and what I learned made me angry in a slow, useful way, because I found out he'd taken a personal loan I didn't know about, $11,000, and I had a guess where it had gone. And then, because I am human and the wound was fresh, I did one more thing. I texted her. Not from my number. The lawyer would have killed me. I made a new email, something anonymous, and I sent the woman a single message that just said, "I hope the storm didn't ruin your trip." Sent. Nothing else. I don't fully know why I did it except that I wanted one of them to feel, even for a second, the floor tilt the way mine had. I never got a reply. But 3 days later he called me, and his voice was off, and he asked in this careful way if I'd noticed anything strange on the card lately, any weird charges, anything that didn't look right. That was the moment I understood the whole shape of it. He wasn't worried I'd found him out. He was worried she had panicked and was about to blow things up, and he was fishing to see if she contacted me. He was managing the leak. Even then, 8 days into living a second life on a beach, his instinct was to handle me. I told him no, nothing strange, everything looked fine, and I smiled when I said it, alone in my kitchen, because I finally had the upper hand, and he had no idea. He came home on a Tuesday. I made dinner, garlic shrimp, the dish he always said his mother used to make, the one I'd taught myself to cook for him our first year together. I set the table nice. I wore the dress from the wedding where we met, the one with the wine stain I'd never been able to fully get out, though he never noticed things like that. He walked in tan and grinning and pulled me into a hug and told me how much he'd missed me, how good it was to be home, how exhausting the training had been, all those breakout sessions. We sat down. He talked. I let him. He told me a long story about a difficult negotiation that I knew for a fact had never happened. He showed me a snow globe he'd bought at the airport, A snow globe from Atlanta in summer. I set it on the windowsill next to its brothers, and then, when he was halfway through his second helping, relaxed, happy, sure he'd made it home clean, I asked him the question. I asked him if he knew what illness she had. He stopped. The fork. The face. The plug pulled. He said, "What?" I said it again, calm as anything. "Your work wife, the one you spent 15 days with in Key West." I asked if he knew what she had, because I'd done some reading, and some of the things people carry, you really want to get tested for early. I said I'd hate for him to be walking around not knowing. I said it the way you'd warn someone about a pothole. I watched him try every door. Denial first. "What are you talking about?" I was in Atlanta. Then the statement folder came out of my bag and onto the table. The resort, the spa, the sunset sail, the jewelry, the airline manifest with both their names. He went gray. Then came the anger. Brief, where he tried to make it about how I'd snooped, how I'd violated his privacy, and I almost laughed. Then the tears. The real or performed, I'll never know. Tears. The "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I'll do anything." But it was the illness question that he couldn't put down, because I'd planted it without any proof at all, and he didn't have proof either. And that's the genius of fear. You don't need it to be true. You just need him to not know it isn't. He kept circling back to it through the whole confession. What did she have? What did you hear? Should I see somebody? He'd just been caught in the most complete betrayal of our marriage, and a not small part of his brain was busy panicking about his own body. That told me everything I needed to know about who he really worried for. Himself. Always himself. I let him stew for 2 days. He went to an urgent care. He actually went. He came home with that hunted look and tried to tell me he'd gotten checked out and everything was fine, like that was the thing I needed reassuring about, and I just looked at him. I'd already filed. He was served 3 days later, at his office in front of the work wife, which I will admit I did not plan but did not mourn. The lawyer had everything organized so cleanly that his attorney barely fought it, because I'd moved early, because I'd documented every dime, because I hadn't tipped my hand. There was nothing for him to hide or shift or quietly drain. The $11,000 loan he'd taken to fund his beach honeymoon was his alone to repay. I kept my retirement, my half of the savings I'd already secured, and the house, because we sold it and I walked away with my share clean instead of being trapped in a mortgage with a ghost. The work wife, I heard later, did not get her happy ending either. He left his wife for her, and she did not leave hers for him, and last I knew she transferred to a different office, and he was renting a 1-bedroom near the highway with the loan still hanging around his neck. I didn't celebrate it. But I didn't lose sleep. People ask if I regret the question, the illness thing, whether it's cruel, and I think about that, honestly, because I'm not a cruel person, and it was the cruelest thing I've ever said to anyone, but here's what I land on. He spent 15 days letting me kiss him goodbye and packing his good shirts so he could go play husband to someone else on a beach while telling me it was rainy. For 2 days, my one question made him sit inside a fraction of the fear I'd been drowning in. 2 days of not knowing, of dreading, of his stomach dropping. I'd had 8. I think we can call it a discount. What I want to say to anyone listening who's sitting where I sat, on a kitchen floor with a phone full of receipts, is this: you don't have to scream. Screaming gives it away. The cold quiet is a gift if you let it be. Get a folder. Call a lawyer before you call him. Know where every dollar is before he knows you're counting. The instinct to confront immediately, to demand answers, to cook the elaborate meal and have the big confrontation, it feels righteous, but it hands in the time you need. Take the time for yourself instead. It's been almost 2 years now. I kept the house key on my ring for a while out of habit, even after it wasn't my house anymore, and one day I just took it off. I have a small place now with too many plants and a kitchen that's mine, and I cook garlic shrimp sometimes, not for anyone, just because I like it, and it tastes better than it ever did across the table from a liar. The snow globes I threw out. All of them. Except, I'll confess, the one from a city he never actually visited, the summer he was somewhere warm pretending it was raining. I keep that one on a shelf, not as a wound, as a reminder of the exact moment I stopped believing the wrong sky. and started trusting the woman who'd known all along which way the weather was really blowing. For a long time I thought the cruelest thing he did was the trip itself. The 15 days, the beach, the woman with the airline seat next to his. But the longer I sit with it, the more I understand that the real betrayal was smaller and quieter than all of that. It was him telling me it was raining. He looked at a sky I couldn't see and described the wrong one on purpose, because he'd decided my version of reality was his to write. That's what cheating really is. Not the body. The editing. And here's the thing I had to learn the hard way. I survived not because I was lucky, but because of 3 things I built before I needed them, even when I didn't know I was building them. The first was simply choosing not to lie back. I could have done 100 uglier things with what I found. I sent 1 anonymous line, and I've made peace with that, but I never forged a document, never stole a dime. I couldn't account for, never made my exit at the cost of who I wanted to be on the other side. When the lawyer laid everything out so cleanly that his attorney barely argued, that wasn't magic. That was me refusing to give him a single thing he could point at and call mine. The second was thinking instead of reacting. The cold, quiet, scared me at first turned out to be the smartest room I ever stood in. Every instinct screamed, confront him, scream, throw the snow globe through the window. If I'd done that, he'd have managed me the way he managed everyone, and I'd have walked away with half a story and none of the proof. Slowing down isn't weakness. Slowing down is how you see the whole board before you move a piece. The third was just refusing to fold. There were nights on that kitchen floor where the easier thing would have been to believe one more maybe, to let him come home and hug me tan, and grinning and pretend the receipts didn't exist. Staying upright through 8 days of knowing, of smiling on the phone, of cooking that dinner with steady hands, took something I didn't know I had until I needed it. If you're standing where I stood, holding a phone full of things that don't add up, I want you to hear this. The person who lied to you bet that you'd be too kind, too rattled, or too tired to do the hard, slow, honest work of standing up for yourself. Prove them wrong by becoming someone who can't be managed. Keep your hands clean, keep your head cold, keep your spine straight. The smile he wore walking through that door was the smile of a man who thought I'd believe the wrong sky forever. I cook garlic shrimp in my own kitchen now for nobody but me, and I trust the weather I can actually feel.